Hello, I'm Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it. Roughly 90% of coral reefs globally face collapse by 2050 due to human activity. At the same time, close to a quarter of all marine life is found in coral reef ecosystems, which support some 1 billion of the world's population. In this episode, Nat Moss explores a creative new financing mechanism designed to help protect coral reefs off the coast of Kenya and Tanzania that are resilient to climate change, while supporting the coastal communities that depend on them.
WCS has an ambitious coral reef conservation program led by Dr. Emily Darling, focused largely on identifying and protecting coral reefs that are resilient to warming ocean temperatures. But to address the full range of challenges to the persistence of global reef systems, including pollution, overfishing, and other destructive human activities, it's increasingly necessary to attract new sources of financial support.
Conservation funding is not enough to address threats faced by coral reefs. And so by addressing the funding gap, we may be able to save our resilient reefs.
Fahd Al-Guthmy directs the Miamba Yetu Sustainable Reef Investments Program at WCS. With a career that spans work in commercial banking and the United Nations Development Program, Fahd is uniquely prepared for his current work to support the conservation of coral reefs in coastal East Africa with market-based approaches. His partner in this venture is Victurine, who brings over 2 decades of experience in conservation finance as WCS's Director of Business and Conservation.
Miamba Yetu Swahili for our reefs, and the focus is on trying to protect those reefs. And it's also looking at something that's called blended finance. That is, trying to bring in money from grants, like from typical donors, but also trying to use that money in a way to attract funding from the private sector.
Miamba Yetu is an outgrowth of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, a UN-led coalition established in 2020 with the main aim of convening public and private sources of funding to address the coral reef funding gap. The Global Fund has various programs all over the world. Miamba Yetu is one of those programs with a focus on coastal East Africa, specifically Kenya, Tanzania, and the Zanzibar archipelago. That coastal seascape is of particular importance for its unique resilience to rising ocean temperatures. Fahd explains.
We have between Kenya and Tanzania an example of a climate refuge, and that is the proposed transboundary conservation area, which was born out of the mutual understanding by both countries that there is a biodiversity hotspot that sits between their borders. The TBCA, as we call it in short, sits on a continental shelf, which means the shallow waters where the coral reefs are adjacent to a very deep shelf that allows for cooler waters to decrease the impact of climate change on the coral reefs, hence them being resilient. And so these systems have swaths of seagrass beds, mangrove forests, a lot of biodiversity under the water.
It's that resilience of these coral reefs to warming ocean temperatures that makes them especially important to protect from other threats. One challenge to raising money in private capital markets is that the desire for a high return on investment can be quite significant. But Fahd says that Miamba Yetu can confront that expectation with attractive incentives.
If you walk into a business, if you walk into a fishing industry corporate office, and you want to change them to become more sustainable, the first thing they would ask you is, why? It's more expensive for me. It's more time and effort for me. Why would I need to work with you? And the answer is because I can make you a better deal than what the conventional market can. So, for example, instead of you going to the bank and getting expensive loans, having to provide collateral or security to back up that loan, we use security-free debt instruments. Our interest rates are very competitive. We provide technical assistance to sort of hold their hand through this journey, because a lot of these businesses don't know what to do in order for them to be reef positive. We don't just provide the financing at very attractive rates. We also provide the technical expertise to walk these businesses into sustainability.
It's still early days, but the Miamba Yetu initiative is already exploring projects in search of financing. There are lots of different investment types that can contribute to the protection of coastal coral reefs, from tourism to aquaculture to efforts by regional governments. Again, here's Fahd Al-Guthmy.
We've identified a pipeline of projects that are lined up for support. One of them is a waste-to-value treatment plant that converts human waste into briquettes that are used as an alternative to charcoal. So this waste is diverted from being dumped in illegal dumping sites, which are right by marine protected areas, right by the ocean. We don't want that to happen. And so by supporting these entities, these partnerships, we're able to reduce the amount of pollution that actually goes into the oceans.
Ray identifies another possible investment idea, an aquarium that could capture the imagination of coastal residents and help create a greater constituency for coral reef conservation in the region.
One of the projects that we're looking at is the feasibility of an investment in a type of aquarium that would bring in young people, students, anyone who happens to be going, because there are many, many people who visit. Hundreds of thousands of people go to those beaches. But one of the ways to increase understanding of the ocean and coral reefs would be to have this kind of aquarium on the beach that people can visit. We think that would be a profitable investment. At the same time, a tremendous educational opportunity and experience for people who live in the region.
Interestingly, says Ray, while people living in coastal communities in Kenya and Tanzania have access to the ocean for recreation and even their livelihoods, they often do not have a lot of knowledge about its ecology or the species that reside there.
This is a general statement, but many people in the region don't know how to swim. People don't know the ocean. They never have seen below the water. They know, that they like going to the beach and they have a beach culture, but they don't really understand much about corals or the ocean.
As I chat with Ray and Fahd, WCS Regional Communications Director Evelyn Namvua listens carefully. The conversation continues, but soon she asks Ray to come back to his observation about the need for greater marine education in the region and why an aquarium would help to generate a greater appreciation for the ocean.
There's a very important comment that Ray made that people don't know much about coral reefs. We go to the oceans and the beach, but we really don't understand them. So, what are like 2-3 things that, are unique about coral reefs?
I would say the incredible experience of seeing teeming, colorful life below the sea would fascinate people. It'd be unbelievable to see a world that most people who go to that beach have never, ever experienced. And I think the corals themselves, the fish, would create such an excitement for people, especially young people who have never experienced that. There's a Spanish saying, eyes that don't see, heart that doesn't feel. We can talk about it scientifically, but there's also that thrill of discovery that would come from better understanding what's below the sea, right there in front of people. So that's what we're trying to convey with the part around education.
Fahd and Ray emphasize that for now, they're focused on establishing necessary structures and financing mechanisms for Miamba Yetu to be able to deploy funds, support, and technical assistance to the beneficiaries in Kenya and Tanzania. We'll be following this exciting initiative and we'll continue to report on it in future episodes. For WCS Wild Audio, this is Nat Moss.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Nat Moss, with help from Dan Rosen and Hannah Kaplan. The WCS Wild Audio Podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts.